When a kid's struggling, do you ever step back and wonder what's going on in their mind or their brain? What synapses are misfiring, or maybe even what chemicals are imbalanced? Sometimes those that work with kids can think that everything is behavioral, that there's a physical world that's impacting and guiding how kids can process the world and what capacities they have in their brain based on the different chemicals and enzymes that are going on in this mysterious, magnificent creation of the human mind. And those times can make parents feel like they're in a really dark place because there are so many different factors that are impacting how our kids are processing the world and can really limit how much we can actually guide them. And what researchers have found is that interacting with the brain chemistry at an earlier stage could steer the chemical imbalance that a kid might have later on in life to something that would enable them to participate in the world in what might be called a more traditional manner. It's incredible, weighty stuff, but Dr. Kathy's going to help us unpack it as we discuss this on the Celebrate Kids podcast in our daily segment, Facing the Dark. So let's turn now to Dr. Kathy Cook.
Don't be afraid of the dark. Be careful with stars. Not every light is gonna guide you, baby. Not every light is gonna guide you.
So, Dr. Kathy, the brain continuously changes during adulthood and really throughout adolescence. The onset of neuropsychiatric disorders, things like schizophrenia, often begin during young adulthood. Dysfunction of the dopamine system, necessary for cognitive processing and decision-making, kind of begins at that same point in development. And now researchers are targeting what they're calling underperforming neurons in the dopamine system that connect to the frontal cortex in mice. This circuitry is essential in higher cognitive processing and decision-making. They found that stimulating the cells that provide dopamine to the frontal cortex strengthened the circuit and rescued structural deficiencies in the brain that cause long-term symptoms. One of the researchers noted that, quote, these findings suggest that increasing the activity of adolescent dopaminergic, I don't even know if I'm saying that word right, circuitry can rescue existing deficits in the circuit, and that this effect can be long-lasting as these changes persist into adulthood. If we can target the right windows in development and understand the signals at play, we can develop treatments that change the course of these brain disorders, end quote. So, Dr. Kathy, this is incredible. It's not only incredible because it's all over my head, it's also incredible because of the link that dopamine has to things inside of technology. Many times we're essentially giving kids stimuli to flood their system with dopamine. It's all really interesting to me and something that I'm continuously reading up on. But I'd like to hear a little bit from you. What are your thoughts on this and these studies that they're doing and how they're being used to kind of treat maybe something that's being caused by our love and addiction to social media?
It's fascinating to me. And I would love to meet people who choose to research with mice. Like, I don't understand that at all. Oh my gosh. Cracks me up, right? I'm just trying to watch these little mice being injected with dopamine and then watching the reactions. Wow. So yeah, dopamine, I tell people all the time that they're not addicted to the device per se. They're not addicted even to the game. They're addicted to the dopamine drop. You can have your phone on silent, but when you recognize that a text has come in, you're distracted and you have now you have a harder time concentrating because the dopamine has affected the prefrontal cortex and the thinking part of the brain. And so, it's dangerous. I mean, this is fascinating. You're right that we believe that gaming and social media in particular are giving kids way too much dopamine. And yet the researchers found out that a little bit of dopamine in the right place can actually prevent maybe or reverse the deficit and maybe stop some of these really dangerous mental health issues. So I'm confused, and I think we need a lot more research.
Yeah, I agree. There is so much to this and so much that's being developed in this to understand really the levels of dopamine and how it does impact on different strata of people's developments is really kind of incredible and interesting and just shouts to the reality of God's beauty and order in creating humans. But there's also something that I'm kind of concerned about here because there's a rise in mental health incidents in teens. We've talked about that a lot. What do you think that this kind of treatment might do for those different things that we see? Because they're really working to treat neuropsychiatric disorders, things like schizophrenia or multiple people personalities or different things like that. And I'm super interested to understand a little bit of what we think this might do for teens and kind of their natural development. What do you think that this might do for mental health?
Well, I wonder, again, we got to learn more. And I love that you're on the lookout for what's going on. I certainly, if I were parenting a child who had been diagnosed already as schizophrenic or multiple personality disorder or other, very serious mental health trauma issues, I would latch on to any hope I could find. And so if there's a way for the right level of dopamine in the right way to stimulate the right things to bring something back to normal, I mean, that's fabulous. I'm concerned about kids who are so used to the dopamine effect that boredom terrifies them and they'll do anything to stay away from being bored, that they cannot handle, reading a book with pages that turn or doing, math problems with a pencil, just go on. And the world is full of things that go slowly. And that's a huge concern I have. And I think that increases the mental health crisis. I don't know if that makes sense. Kids who are dissatisfied, kids who are discontent, kids who are bored constantly. That's why they have to have their device and why it's so hard for them when we say take it away or put it away. But I am concerned that they're not going to be able to live in the real world because the real world does not work like a screen.
Right. And Dr. Kathy, I want to close out with this kind of last question because I think that it's helpful for parents to kind of know maybe what we're facing a little bit. When we look around at our kids and things of that nature, we can see them struggling. But how do we know when our kids might be struggling with something that's kind of mental health related? And how do we know maybe when those things are environmental? Maybe they have kind of a challenged friend or a challenge in their classroom. And how do we know when maybe they're actually kind of a biological issue that might need some treatment? Is there certain things that we should be attentive to as we're watching our kids develop and grow?
Yeah, great question. I like to say to parents that, sudden changes in your kid's behavior would indicate something's going on. And it might be with them, or as you said, it might be with a friend of theirs, and they're not handling the stress well that, is caused by the fact that their best friend's parents are talking divorce or whatever might be going on there. So I would look for sudden changes in their choices, decisions, attitudes, and actions. I like to say that we typically, I don't think we should ask kids, hey, are you stressed? Are you depressed? Because I'm not sure they know what that feels like. And even if they recognize stress, I'm not sure they'd want to admit it to you because they've been told it's a bad thing. And they wonder what might happen if they would admit to a mom or a teacher or a dad, yeah, Dad, I'm stressed. So what I like to say is we observe behavior and we say to our kids, hey, I noticed that you were so critical with your brother today. And typically, you're kinder. So what's up with that? We say to our daughter, normally you enjoy hanging out and you like to go for my after dinner walk with me and you haven't wanted to do that for a couple of nights. So I'm thinking something's going on. So let's indicate to our kids that we're aware, that we're present, that we have seen something that's changed, and we invite them to have a conversation. And then when we have those conversations, we listen longer and we are really careful to judge. We listen longer, feel their pain before you try to solve a problem. Those are some of the things that I think will help us recognize what level of pain are our kids in and what is it that we could do about it.
I appreciate where Dr. Kathy kind of leaves us here. It's something that I think we see also in Psalm 30. And I'm going to begin reading in Psalm 30, verse 8. And this is what David writes. To you, Lord, I called. To the Lord I cried for mercy. What is gained if I am silenced? If I go down to the pit, will the dust praise you? Will it proclaim your faithfulness? Hear, Lord, and be merciful to me. Lord, be my help. You turned my wailing into dancing, and you removed my sackcloth and clothed me with joy, that my heart may sing your praises and not be silent. Lord my God, I will praise you forever. Psalm 30 is such an interesting psalm. It's a psalm that I think deals with the reality that many parents will have to interact with, that there are dark places that we end up sitting in and we don't understand and don't know how to get out of. And David comes to this place where he says, what is good about this situation that's going to praise you, Lord? Can the dust praise you in the bottom of this pit? But I think where Dr. Kathy encourages us as parents and people who work with kids is to remind ourselves of the Lord's faithfulness in each and every moment. And this new data and new research is a place where God has enabled us to understand greater the design and the beauty of his creation. And for those of us with kids, Dr. Kathy's call for us to get them out into the world, to experience the world and see the world and to understand the different dynamics of the world that calls out and cries and worship for him. Well, stepping into that habit is something that pierces through darkness. And it's something that I hope is an encouragement for you today. I want to thank you for listening to the Celebrate Kids podcast in our daily segment, Facing the Dark. My name is Wayne Stender, and on behalf of Dr. Kathy Cook, I want to say thanks for listening, and we're looking forward to seeing you here again tomorrow.